War game anytime.
Welcome to a special edition of the Any War Game Anytime podcast. We are joined by a very special guest. But first of all, just to introduce myself again, I'm Dan, and we have Sam here. How you doing, Sam?
Doing just great.
Doing just great. Good to hear. And our special guest, the incomparable man himself, the man, the myth, the legend. It's Chris.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
We're doing great. We're doing great. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Everything. I mean, got some rain yesterday, so I can't complain.
We got a lot of clouds and a lot of wind, but no rain. So we're glad it rained somewhere around here.
Yeah.
So yeah, me and Sam, and we've been really looking forward to have you on here, Chris. Not because you're just, you're one of our locals. You've been around the Austin scene for a long time, but I think it would be remiss if we didn't mention the fact of how much work you have put into the Austin Kings of War community. You're our local Kings of War organizer in Austin, and you do a lot of work. You organize our tournaments, you bug people. Me personally, I remember when I came back post-COVID that you were the first person to give me games. You got me back in the game. You've really helped me out with the rules, because I remember I was playing second, and like you really you've been such an asset to the Kings of War community in Austin, and you've put in so much work. I would think, maybe, I don't know if I'm overstating it, but I think we can say that without your efforts, the Austin Kings of War community would not be where it is, if possibly not even exist. What do you think about that, Sam? Is that?
I agree to that. I don't think yeah, and I'm also very grateful, Chris, for doing our organizing our events and really just being there to push people and play games, which is good. I There was a period of time when I wasn't sure Kings of War was coming back post shutdown, so really grateful for that. And that's part of why we wanted to have you on our podcast. So
Absolutely. Chris, so what just kind of tell us a little bit of what you do for the local Austin Kings of War community. So
Well, let's see here. I mean, during COVID, I did my best to make sure, the system didn't die out completely, because, I mean, it was a long stretch of playing in people's houses, which definitely killed attendance in general at the stores. But once we got going back in, you're right. There was a very low lax. I mean, a lot of people were not sure that it was safe. People weren't sure about the game. The game was in a odd kind of spot due to not enough players, not enough information for the next system boot to come out, so to speak. So, I mean, my goal at the time was make terrain like I've always done. I mean, I've always liked making terrain, but I also saw the need for having quality terrain for us to use, given that, terrain in the store can often go missing or be destroyed because, well, people. But the other thing was just to try to encourage people getting out there to play. I mean, it was hard. I mean, we still have some people who are a little worried. I mean, not to name names, we had some people who said, "Oh, I'm system compromised, and so I'm hesitant about going out." And my goal was to try to assuage fears as best I could and get as many people out there, because, like you said, we were in risk for a while of basically just attendance dropping out, because right at that time, I mean, when people were coming back out, 40K and Age of Sigmar were huge, and I could have easily seen our players getting swollen up into that, because we've had a decent number of people, but we've never had a big output at one time.
Yeah. And that's, I remember our first games, and I was one of those people, especially having my daughter. I really disappeared, for a while there. And I remember you were the first person I played, and you were really the first person that I really came into contact with back from my old gaming communities, and we were playing in our masks. I
went to several GTs with a mask on.
Yeah. And I can't mention it is so true that Chris has basically donated. I don't has anyone paid you any money for that? I haven't given you any money for the terrain. And does anyone is this just out of your own pocket? Am I wrong on that, Chris?
No, I mean that's all. I mean, terrain can be expensive to make when you first start making it, but once you learn the tricks and the ways, there's a reason I keep a whole bunch of scrap all around my house all the time because anything can be made into terrain if you just think about it correctly. I mean, open cell foam, closed cell foam, boxes, packing foam. So I mean, it doesn't cost that much. I mean, I can see how it costs somebody at first a lot of money. It can be daunting because you look at these professional videos, they're like, oh, get this paint, get this flocking, get this glue. It's like, no, you can do it all that on the cheap. I mean, the most expensive thing I ever did was I tried to rebase my own foam board that I have here at the house, but that was just because my cats decided that they need a scratching post.
That's awesome.
I use for flocking. My trick is I use like a rosemary and thyme. You get in a contain like spices, and I just like mix some of that together, and that's what I use for flocking because it works really well.
You're not the first person, Sam. There's some guy on YouTube that talks about making basing with herbs in bulk from I don't know, Costco or something like that.
I think that's where I got the idea. It's like, oh, this is actually it looks really good and natural,
Yeah. Well, and like that's huge. Like to say, like I said, we as a Kings of War community, we have our own. Chris has his own box for us. No one else can touch it. We get good Kings of War terrain that you're right. No one messes with, no one destroys. Now we ourselves mess up. Like I said, I apologized to Chris and he was gracious, but yeah, I messed up our terrain. And I definitely apologized with Chris, and because it's something that he did for the community when it was COVID, right? And I think that's really impressive. I didn't do anything for the Kings War community during COVID. And so,
Daniel, it occurs to me, I'm sorry to interrupt. It occurs to me real quick. I never did answer your question. No one has ever given me a penny of money. In fact, the closest I ever got to any compensation was before COVID, I held a terrain night at Dragon's Lair, which ironically enough, to no one's surprise, no one showed up for.
Oh man. Well,
there's one thing I want to point out to our viewers who may not be familiar with differences in war games and such, and why we're talking about Kings of War terrain versus like terrain for any war game. And sometimes what you end up with, so Kings of War is a rank and flanks tactics game. You're using larger formations, and so you need terrain that's gonna be suitable for that. A lot of times, terrains at stores will have like this really big, cliff for a hill. You can't really do that in Kings of War because you can't put you can't physically put sometimes your large formations on top of this hill. So you have to have like a smoother thing. You have to have, a forest. You have to have trees that could kind of be removed because, if you're marching a unit through that, you need to be able to fit them through it. So that's I wanted to point that out for, as a kind of a.
And Chris's terrain works great for it. The forests are removable. The hills are sloped. We don't have to use all those stairs type of things. It's great. And I want to extend, so kind of thank you, Chris. First of all, coming on here, I think, and I want to extend this to not just yourself, but countless others like you. How has Kings of War continue to grow and to thrive? It's by efforts of yourself and countless other nameless people who just put in the work, right? Who put in the organizing. Sometimes we can focus on some of the important people in our group, if that's if we want to be so have so much hubris. But I think a lot of the reason that Kings of War is where it is and will continue to be where it is off really the backs off people like Chris. So Chris, thank you. All the unknown local organizers, thank you so much for continuing to support our game and bring us together. So thank you, Chris.
Not a problem. I do what I can.
Okay. So Chris, with that, so you probably watched before, but me and Sam, we have been really interested in building up data through some surveys. What what we want to do is we want to have more of a data-driven approach to Kings of War here. So we're gonna we've been looking at our survey questions and we've been refining them, and we want to ask you a series of questions to get just your honest pick. Now, Chris, the important thing here is we brought you on because you're honest. So we want you to be very honest in these survey questions because this is serious. This is how we are really going to get good feedback. So let's get into some of these survey questions. So the first of which, we're going to have a scale and we're going to have you rate Mantic as a company. So Chris, on a scale of 11 to 11, how would you rate Mantic as a game company?
I feel like this is a trap. 11 to 11 doesn't leave much wiggle room.
No, it's perfect. It's 11, and then maybe you could have the 0.5 in there or something. Yeah.
You would accept an answer of 12 if
Right. No, it can be 11 is so.
Oh, honestly, I don't think a scale of 11 to 11 does it justice. I think we're more at this point in time at negative 11.
Oh my god.
I think negative 11 is more honest than I can give it right now.
Oh, okay. So the scale is 11 to 11, so we will count you as 11. So great. Great. Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate it. Hey, this is great feedback, right? We've gotten 11, this is terrific. Okay. Chris, how would you we have a multiple choice question here. Chris, how would you describe Ronnie Renton? Would you describe him as A, the most spectacular man that has ever existed? B, the most awesome man that's ever existed? C, the most wonderful man that's ever existed? Or D, the most incredible man that has ever existed?
I think there's only one way to address a legend like Ronnie Renton, one of the original old school GW crew members who helped found a game that we all loved for over 30 years, not Kings of War, and went the way of the dodo. He is the man in the ivory tower.
Okay, so I think that is the most wonderful man. So that's C, right, Sam? It is
I think
the most wonderful man, right?
We can put down C for our records.
Okay, C for our records. The most wonderful man that has ever existed. Terrific. All right, our third and final question. Chris, let's talk about balance. Now, this is important questions, Chris. Chris, how would you describe the balance in Kings of War? Is it A, perfectly balanced? B, perfectly balanced? C, perfectly balanced? And D, to be clear, D, perfectly balanced. You notice the difference in inflections there. So
I noticed the difference, and I only have one comment for this in return. What is this word you speak of?
Yeah, it's perfectly balanced. Now, was that it's different. You didn't catch the slight different tones, but yes.
But you had to catch my tone. What is this word you speak
of? Balanced, right? I mean, perfectly balanced, perfectly balanced, perfectly balanced, or perfectly balanced. See, it's the difference.
But there's also
the extra
perfect balance, which is
balanced. Perfectly.
What is this word? Right. What is this word?
Well, since we don't have an other response, we will put him down. Is that an A?
Yeah, we'll put that. We'll put that. I'm marking that down as A.
A, perfectly
balanced. I think
balanced.
that's the best fit for Chris.
Terrific. Great. We have an A perfectly balanced. All right, great. Okay, let's get on to some other topics. So survey is great. You think everything is going wonderful. We're very happy. This is going off great.
Excellent.
We are getting so closer to have Ronnie Renton come on our podcast, which is our ultimate goal here. So all right.
Godspeed with that.
So let's talk about some of. So one of the things that just jumps out to me is that you play Twilight, Ken, and what a good person to get involved in this is Twilight, Ken. So first of all, we'd love to know, what do you there's rumors coming out right now. So first thing I would ask, what do you want out of the army? So in other words, if you were involved with the design, the development of Twilight King, what would you like to see? And then maybe say, what do you expect to get? So
when it comes to Twilight Kin, I have to start off with, if you're a Twilight Kin player, you have come into the game under a light of suffering. Because in the original second edition, you had to suffer through countless years of playtest versions and no official army being recognized, and then being taken off the market and then released haphazardly into third, into 3.5. This is the third time the army will come back.
Mhm.
So as a Twilight Kin player, you are definitely a masochist. I mean, you are not in this for the joy. You're in this for the suffering of one day getting your, pointy ears, S&M kind of people. But having said that, I think that they have a chance to make it right this time around. But I also have a fear that they are trying to go beyond the mechanics of the game system with what they're suggesting.
Mhm.
I mean, it could be good, but it could also explode. I mean, I thought the second edition playtest version was perfectly fine and should have been put full bore in, but that wasn't their vision. Is this going to work? I think it has a chance, but I think we're trying to literally horseshoe a whole new element into mechanics that's not fit for it. I think the direction they're going at the Twilight Kin is more of a fourth edition mechanics change, and it's just you're trying to shove a Porsche engine into a VW Bug.
Yeah.
It'll fit, but it's going to run rough as hell because
Okay.
it's too much power, too small of a container.
No,
I think that's the most elegant way to put it.
Okay.
And,
Now,
I think
Oh, go
I
ahead.
think just to add on to that, I think that's kind of been part of my fears. What I see of the recent armies they're pushing, the changes they've done is we're going to have basically instead of a relatively straightforward game, where every army and every kind of different units are going to have their own special rules, and they're going to break the rules in certain ways, and so your knowledge base as a player is going to have to like massively expand because you're okay. Well, I know the rules of the game. Oh, but here's I'm playing against Night Stalkers or Twilight Kin. Well, here's this unit that has this rule that can break the normal rules of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and it creates this issue where I think people like me, and I think Chris as well. I'm not, if I may be so bold to speak for you, who came out of Warhammer Fantasy. We saw this a lot with Warhammer Fantasy, where they would push, that where every time there'd be a new codex, they get all the fancy toys, and the units that were bad in the last edition were all of a sudden amazing now. So you had to go pick up the new models, and you know you sometimes it felt in Warhammer Fantasy like you sit down against an opponent and you're really not playing the same game because your armies function so differently
All right.
that you're kind of just like, what are we even doing?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think, and when you talk like that, I come from, see, my last real, again, I'd been out of fantasy for a while. Our group in my previous, I'd played, but they kind of crumbled. So I played, I mean, what you're talking about to me is War Machine, because I came from a lot of War Machine, and that's pretty much what War Machine was. Every single unit had their own special ability. Each caster had these feats, and yeah, it was a different, it wasn't a war game. It was, I always say War Machine is a card game masquerading as a war game. I don't think that Kings of War is there yet, but
The problem is it could be there.
Yeah. Well, to me, I look at, they want to make the armies different. And in second edition, the armies were different because of the units they had. But it seems now the newer work, they want to kind of add all the same units to every army or very similar versions. I always said like every army gets a giant now, or everyone gets chaff, right? So that now all the armies from an army unit perspective are getting more similar. So they need maybe special rules, I feel, to kind of help that out.
Adding in game mechanics, and it's
Well, just to interject on that point right there, that is something I've been thinking about for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason, switching over to halflings for a second, the reason we didn't see that come in is because there were so few people who were working on them that we didn't have a chance to get integrated by all those different rules. And this gets back to the point of the Twilight Kin and everything else, which is what we're seeing right now. I believe you could literally call the designer's curse. People want to design new elements to the game to keep it fresh because that's how you keep it interesting. But the problem with this is this, and this is where the curse comes in, is that the more you add to it, the more you have to add to the game itself. Because at one point, all the special rules we had were enough to encompass everything.
Yeah.
Then we got things like Ravenous and Spell Word, and God only knows what else we're going to get now. So
Leaper.
I mean, there's
Leaper.
all these new keywords, all these new rules, mechanics.
The frozen synergies in the new Twilight in the new Northern Alliance are a great example, right?
Exactly, and that's where we're going to have problems.
It is something that the game is becoming more interactive to me in kind of a bad way. One of the things that I've historically enjoyed about Kings of War is that when it's not your turn, you get to sit back and plan. You get to watch your opponent, really look at things. And more now, with Windblast and everything, my phase where I'm just watching my opponent and planning gets interrupted. Oh, he Windblasts me. I need to move it. And you could surely say, well, it's not your turn, but you're generally going to have to move your own models, right? You're generally going to here, take this frozen token, put this. And it's a different feel where I'm not previously I was really able to just watch my opponent and just plan. Now I have all these additional things. I'm having to grab this and move this here, get this token, do this. And it's like it's on my turn where my opponent is supposed to be moving. I am now basically kind of sucked into their turns.
And you see, Daniel, your statement right there kind of leads me to believe that you understand what I'm saying earlier about how the game is getting to the point where it's needing a new edition change. I think this new Clash has a chance to supplement some of the problems, but I think the effort would be better spent on making a 4th edition because, as you just stated right there, all these things you have to do on your turn instead of watching, observing, and planning, you now have to do all this housework, little upkeep chore stuff.
It's upkeep, it's chores.
That's changing the game system.
Yeah.
So we are definitely looking at a paradigm shift. Basically, the game needs to stop thinking it's in 3rd edition and start planning for 4th, because the stuff they want to do, it's not fitting into the current mechanic system.
Yeah.
I mean, lately the problems have been like double ones. That's been huge. I'm sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're exactly right, it feels like we're playing a different game than, and it's they've added all these new things and without really taking into account how they affect the overall state of the game. And
so but power level, right? That seems to be the first of all, for Twilight Ken. How are Twilight Ken, do you feel going to be broken, or you feel they're just going to be overpowered, underpowered? How would you augur their power level? You just had to take a guess.
I would say they have a history, Mantic and RC in general, have a history of not really testing things enough. So I have a feeling they're going to come out of the engine overtuned. Now, to what degree overtuned? I don't know. I mean, it's going to take at least 6 months to a year to see where they place. I think the first couple of GTs after this release comes out and is officially accepted by the Grand tournaments, they're going to place kind of high. Will they place high enough? That's always player level. But to answer your question, I think they're going to be overtuned, but I think there's going to be 2 telling things that will be in there, or at least to me. These are almost personal gripes at this point.
Yeah.
Will we have a cav that actually is usable? Because Twilight Ken have always suffered from having a cav twist that's usable. And will the spell tiers on their mages actually mean anything? But that's very much a personal thing for me because I've always been on the mage tiers don't mean anything kind of kick.
Yeah.
They really don't mean very much generally, and it's kind of a weird thing to be in the core mechanics of the game, but it doesn't really actually do anything.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the same with a lot of the keyword. Like they introduced keywords in 3rd edition, and so that they could do these kind of like, okay, auras affect only this keyword or whatever. But the issue is like there's a whole lot of units with keywords that just don't mean anything. And that don't do anything. They have no interactions. And so it's like, why put that in the game? Why add that?
Yeah, I don't mind that as much. I think I more mind just kind of what auras, it's kind of the direction that auras are going into, about how it's just this weird thing about everyone's auras affecting certain people and here, and is it going to start getting 3 or 4 different auras around, and 2 auras
more
affect
fourth edition
one
changes,
particular
exactly.
person, but it's this group, and it's not. It's
Mhm.
like it's just a different game now, where it's now you have to mention it almost in bubbles. I know that worked with Inspiring, but it's like they always say, quantity is a quality of its own. Just an Inspiring bubble is nice, but when you have a lot more of these bubbles running around here, it's
Yeah.
And they're changing some of the core strategic elements of the game from being more about synergies and less about what the game, to me, what I fell in love with, which was tactics and positioning, right? And you could
Mhm.
have, and it also ties into what you're talking about, how it used to be that on my turn I could kind of sit back and plan my turn. Well, now so much changes now in during my opponent's turn that, well, I can't really do that anymore. And so my I feel a lot of times like my you can't, it's harder to, not, you're not playing as much a tactics and positioning game. It's about like, okay, I have this unit and it's getting this synergy and it's going to do this thing, and okay,
Mhm.
I'd rather play a tactics. I'd rather play a rake and playing tactics game, and not.
Well, and we'll get into suggestions, but before we leave Twilight Can, I do.
Mhm.
Have you seen the latest Twilight Can? They've been putting out their diaries.
Mhm.
What do you think about the aesthetic look of Twilight Can? They have the infantry, I guess, and the ship, the boat. I guess it's a boat because it's ran by a single person. Boat,
Yeah,
a raft, I guess.
this boat thing they have, I like the idea of basically sailing the waves of the ether or the meta or whatever they want to call it. I mean, going old school fantasy, you'd call it the mana. You're sailing the waves of the mana, but the design of the boat is just bad, in my opinion. I'm sorry. Just I understand. I get the idea of living flesh armor, whatever you want to call it, because that's the fluff that's been behind it. It's like, oh, they incorporated this living material, and the impalers or the elves have grown into their armor, become big, basically roid raged.
Yeah,
the boat is just a bad look. I mean, as for the impalers, the large infantry, I can't really tell. I mean, the individual dude, I think it was called the Soulbane, the one on the 40 or 50 millimeter base.
Yeah.
He was kind of neat looking.
Yeah.
But the entire living armor, like hands making up the shield kind of thing, I'd have to see it in person. I mean, maybe with some paint, it can look good.
Yeah, it didn't have any paint on it. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really like the overall idea of it, but maybe it's just because I'm seeing it in artist renditions and unpainted. Maybe if I saw it painted, I'd change my opinion. I don't know.
Could you say the same with the boat? Like the video on the boat, I felt like the darkness and the mist and the lighting was all meant to sort of obscure the model itself in just regular lighting. Like I don't know.
They weren't painted that good.
Well, no, they were painted, but
I said they weren't. I said they weren't painted good though. Like that's
oh,
the thing.
It's hard to tell, right? It's got the smoke and the lighting. I don't know. I got a bit of an impression that maybe they were trying to like kind of being like,
somebody took
model's not so great, but we'll put a lot of stuff around it. And we'll do some ambience on it.
Yeah, somebody took like they took one, they watched one video on color theory and thought that these things would look good together, and it doesn't. It doesn't look good.
Is it just me? It feels like it looks like a boat. It looks like it's a boat at like 10 scale, and there's just a giant elf. Like, am I wrong on that? It feels like it feels like she's a giant elf running a big boat.
This is a region.
It's giant looking, right? Everything's a giant, and she's just.
It feels like they made these for Armada. and couldn't sell them, and then so they're going, oh, let's put a guy on it and call it like the boats look like they're Armada miniatures with a giant elf on them.
Don't give him ideas, Sam.
All right, but Chris,
yes,
give us some positive here, right? Let's okay.
Oh,
we're gonna have to put a disclaimer on this podcast. Holy crap!
Positive.
We had the YGW sucks podcast last time, and I wasn't part of that, so I didn't get to vent my frustrations about GW. So now you're gonna hear about Mantic.
It's Chris. This is Chris. We're gonna have you more often. You're
all right.
No. So yeah, go ahead. Some
Positive
last
about
thoughts.
the kin or Mantic, or what do you want positive on?
Yeah, so finish off on Twilight Kin, and we're going to talk about some more general stuff. So first of all, any
Okay.
closing thoughts on Twilight Kin?
I think the old saying is third time's a charm. I really hope they hit it out of the park with this one. I think they finally devoted enough time on it, but did they do it right?
Mhm.
I mean, let's be honest, the RC has a history of not doing the right thing at the right time, but this is a new bunch, new batch. There's some hometown heroes up there again in the RC. So, I'm hoping that they see the frustration here at home and abroad, of course.
Mhm.
I really think they have a chance.
And it's not done. And to be clear, we do have to reserve some positive. It isn't done. And so I think that's fair to do, right, Chris, to
Yeah,
reserve some of that. Yeah, that's fair.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
perfect. Okay, good. So, how about just in general? Let's look at some general questions here, Chris. Chris,
Mhm,
you've been around. You're like me and Sam. You've been around from the beginning. You went to
mhm.
that first tournament in Lone Wolf. You remember it. How balanced do you feel Kings of War is now, historically or just generally? What do you feel about the balance in Kings of War?
It's there. It has the chance, depending on how they go from here on forward. I think the game was doing great in second edition. I
Mhm.
think some of the changes were bad, some of the changes were good. I think third failed horribly. I think 3.5 tried to fix it, but didn't have enough R&D in it for whatever reason. So I feel with this new coming up right here, the game can be once again in a good comparable place. If this next update fails to hit the mark, I think we're looking at a fourth edition. So to answer the question in the pure simplest form, it's there, but it's leaning a little too far to the left. It's not centered up anymore. The balance is just it's a tad off. It could be there, but
Could be.
it's very precarious right now.
And that's good to hear. And let's speak positively here. There are some games which have no chance at being balanced. I mean, where it's so much work. So you're saying that the game is at a place. Your opinion, from you can correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you're
Mhm.
saying the game has some balance issues, but it's not too far gone that it can't be fixed relatively easily,
It
right?
can be saved. It
Okay.
can be saved. Now, whether or not it is saved, that's the huge disclaimer. I mean, I think there was a lot of bad choices from third edition on up made, and I don't know who, why, or what was going on. I mean, I know there's a lot of chaos, COVID, and
Yeah.
infighting, and drama, and everything. But I also know that there's supposed to be. I love that word, supposed
Yeah.
to be a whole bunch, a series of checks and balances to ensure that it didn't get to this point. And I think we're seeing the results of a neglected, mismanaged system to this point, and someone's trying desperately to change it, because I saw a little bit of that in 3.5.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're there. We're kind of leaning balanced, but we're also leaning to the left too far again. So I mean, it can be saved. And to answer your question, it can be saved.
That's good. That's good. And I want to just throw something in as well. I think that sometimes I think when maybe criticisms do come about, it seems maybe those criticisms sometimes can be taken as looking at the people in charge right at the moment. And I don't think, at least for me, when I perhaps have criticisms, I prefer to think of it as a whole, because you're right. There's some new rules committee people here.
Mhm.
That's what I hear. I know nothing about what goes on in the rules committee, but it isn't fair. And I don't think anyone perhaps looks at the current list and to say, you're on the rules committee, instantly you are responsible for the myriad of changes and the context of the myriad of changes that have happened for 7 years. So I think that we have to, like, when at least for me, I don't look at one particular person. I look at, you're right. It's exactly what you said, Chris. Am I wrong on that? There's really hard
No,
to blame
you're on the right.
anyone. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I mean, literally, the easiest way to think of it is think of the RC as the presidency of the United States. Each
Good.
president inherits the problems of the past 4 years,
Mhm.
unless, of course, they were there that place. But whenever you have a new president coming in, they have to take control of the problems of the past presidents, past 4 8 years, depending on the term, And it's the same thing with the RC. Some of these RC members, in theory, have been around since the beginning, and some haven't. I mean, I don't know who all's there and who all's been removed. I think this is a completely fresh batch this time around.
Yeah.
But in the past, we had RC members who would carry on from one system to the next. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, you have people who are trying to fix a mistake or accident or who knows what from the past group.
Yeah, it's a good point. Very good.
And that's a heavy load sometimes.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course,
it's a lot to untangle.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Okay, so what about suggestions? So we've bounced around a couple of suggestions. Some suggestions for Kings of War, just inside of the game and out of the game. Is there anything in, like, whether it's game balance or maybe just other areas? What do you think are some good suggestions to make Kings of War a better game?
I think there's two things we could do to the game to make it massively easier for new players, because people who are corner guards, basically old war gamers like ourselves, they're used to wading in, to paragraphs upon pages of paragraphs of rules and complex little details. But for the people who are not that same position, the people who are basically the lifeblood of this game, getting new people in there, there's two things that we could do to make it easier for these new people, and two things I think that would make it easier for us old people as well. One, remove the 1-inch rule. I think we can all agree the 1-inch rule serves no more purpose. I mean, there's so many exceptions to it. Oh, you can be within 1 inch now. Oh, you can't be within 1 inch now. This, that. I mean, it fluxes too much. Tracking down each individual instance of that just makes it frustrating. Just forget about it. As someone who did reenactment fighting back in a million years ago when I was young, there was no, oh, you have to stay. No, you got on top of people, and sometimes you're just buttressed up with people you're supposed to be fighting. It just happens. There is no, minimum distance. That just needs to go away. And that kind of leans into the other thing that I think would help. Some of the more convoluted rules, like how withdrawal, disengage, sharing, frontage, I think if we took all of that stuff that was a little too wordy, a little too heady, and cut it up and rewrote it in simpler terminology, so there's less obfuscation about it, less confusion, less problems, it would make it a lot easier. It's like, how complex have we made the entire withdraw corkscrew charge just in sheer verbiage? In the 7 years I've played, have never once been able to fully understand what it means to equally share foot frontage whenever you multi-charge something. I've never understood that, no matter how many times I've explained it to me. It's like, what does that mean exactly? And no one's been able to give me an answer that sticks in my brain, which suggests to me that it's overcomplicated. It needs to be broken down to something simpler. Maybe it's just because my brain doesn't work in metric. I don't know. But these little things right here, if we took them, rewrote them to be simpler, and got rid of the 1-inch rule, I think those two changes right there would vastly improve the ease of the game.
That's good. Okay.
Mantic has always been in need of an editor to look at their new releases and rules and such. I mean, that's they could if they're going to hire a new person at Mantic, they just need to hire an editor.
Yeah.
It's some of it's needlessly complicated, creates these long-standing problems. And I agree with Chris. It's like there are certain things that I really don't even know how they work or how they're supposed to work in the game, because either they've changed it 3 times, or there's like the rules, and then there's like the 3 different clarifications, and then there's so and so's opinion on how that actually works. Just you need to simplify it. It's a problem.
We'll keep this Chris centric. I will. My particular comment is just to get rid of the corkscrew. That'd be my, if that's one thing that I would interject into this. But okay, so how about the new edition? Okay, so Chris, you've it's a good segue, because you talked and I think you really hit the nail on the head about talking about the president, right? The rules committee, they're coming out with this new edition. They didn't, whatever the mistakes in the past were not, these are their rules committee's things. They've got a new edition coming out. With that, like I said, with that understanding that the rules committee can only do so much, and
they don't have a new edition coming out.
I'm sorry, the king, the new Clash of Kings. I apologize.
Yeah.
What do you want to see in the new Clash of Kings, Chris? What do you
Oh, new Clash of Kings. my wishes are probably much higher than the reality could be.
Mhm.
But if wishes were druthers, I think my wishes would be along the lines of every army looked at in detail and find all the little niggling problems, like random points increase, random points decrease, have those units buffered out. And I'd like to see things like, I guess telling, I think it was my friend Nick the other day, or maybe it was Lex, I can remember. What would be wrong with every army having an option of a unit that was a troop regiment horde option that hit on threes with crush one? Would this really break the game? Because at one time, the RC was telling me, oh, having hordes that hit on threes, more hordes that hit on threes, is a huge no-no. It's like, really? But again, wishes, druthers, that's just one little thing.
A general point. It sounds like you just want to
Yeah.
see a general point rebalance, right?
But I think the biggest thing I would like to see, and this doesn't really hit on the rules, this hits on more the meta of our entire community, our entire game system. And this is going to be an unpopular one. I'd like to see the dismantling of the RC.
Okay. Well,
I want to go
boy,
back to
this
the
is
way it
this
was
is.
in second edition.
Let's put an extra disclaimer on this one. My goodness. Okay, so
Yeah, I knew this was going to be unpopular, but
all right,
here's
go
what
ahead.
I'd like to see instead.
All
What
right,
I'd like
go
to
ahead.
see instead is in second edition, Mantic had a website that had a forum, and they posted up in an Excel spreadsheet every single thing that was being done to second edition. And anyone can go in there and look at it. We all played off of spreadsheets off the website. There was no need for an RC because, there was a group of guys, I don't know what they're called at the time, maybe they were called an RC, but the point is everyone could see what's going on. So having this veil of secrecy, having everything work behind oh, you don't get to know what's going on, you don't even know who the RC members are. No, we don't need all of that. We need an open format. It doesn't mean that these people who are allowed to work on it have to respond to us, the crowds, the peons in the gallery.
Yeah.
But we should be able to see what's happening. It's like, why should 5, 6, 10 people have complete control over something that thousands, if not millions of people enjoy, but we don't get to see what's happening?
Yeah.
Why can't it all be open?
Well, I think that you're hitting because you actually, I didn't even realize, but it's so true. Early in Kings of War, the forum, I remember going on there, and there was a lot of us old original people on there, and we really had candid conversations that about rules, and we just worked things out. I mean, I remember as a community, I posted on it. Chris, I know you were on it. There's a lot of people that we were on it, and we were a lot more candid about that forum. And I do miss that now that you mentioned it. I didn't even think about it, but you're right. To have that forum is something that, now that you mentioned, is something that would be nice to have. Yeah.
I mean, if I was in charge, the way I'd do it, it'd be very simple. We get rid of the RC, no hard feelings, just we don't want all this hidden stuff. We nominate people to basically be, okay, you're a representative of this faction or this element of the designs, not a rules committee, just basically game mechanic engineers.
Mm-hmm.
You all have to post what you're doing on a forum that everyone can read. And if you put something up there, everyone can look at it in a spreadsheet, preferably, so we can all see what's going on. We have a change log. We have your formula. No more just like, oh, I think this is worth 5 points. I would think that's worth 30 points. No, it's like, an exact formula that we all stick to. And everything's just posted up there. Everyone can see it.
Yeah.
But the big thing is everything's known. Now, do these people like I said before, do these people have to respond to us? No. Their job is to balance the game out towards a goal of some sort, which would be another thing stated, the goal, the mission statement, just like a company. Yeah. But they would have no obligation to be like, oh, we don't like this, you have to change this. Like, no, we've done the research, we've done the games, we've done the math, it works best this way.
But they have an obligation to what about an obligation to Mantic? What about that?
Listen, every company is going to use the argument they're here to make money.
Right.
But the way to make money. You sell something that people want.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't want this because it's too convoluted or it doesn't work correctly, it has too many problems, you're not achieving your goal. The way to make money is not by making models and making rules around them. It's by making models everyone wants, regardless of what the rules are for it. It's by making a balanced system that everyone wants to play.
Yeah. Is it okay for us to, I don't know, to be honest about that? that Mantic want to make money? It feels like I feel that's a pretty. I feel it's a pretty banal point, right? Am I wrong on that? It seems. Is Mantic ran on dreams and hugs and flowers and posies, or do they want to make money? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I come from the business world, and just to me, it's a very banal point that they want to make as much money as possible. I don't view companies like that as negative. It's just coming from the business world. Yeah, it seems pretty banal to say that. Wrong? Am I wrong in that? Am I allowed to say that, Sam? Should we cut this part out?
I think yeah, but I think the point is that we're kind of dancing around a little bit is, our loyalty to Mantic is based on them producing a product.
Right.
I don't have any sentiment attached to them that's not based on them producing something that I want. And I don't feel like quite honestly, I should have any loyalty towards them unless they're producing something that I want. I mean, they're not my friends and family. I have loyalty to my friends and family, and regardless of what they do. Even some of them are dicks.
Right.
But Mantic's a company. I'm interested in purchasing a product. As long as they're going to produce a product that's good, then that's that they have my loyalty. But if they stop doing that, I don't want to just support them for and not get anything from it.
All right. Well, so we'll close out here. I think that we've basically been when we post this, we need to go into hiding and no, I'm just joking. No, final thing, Chris.
Yes.
The long-term future of Kings of War. Where do you see Kings of War in 5 years?
In 5 years, I see it either in the trash can or up there with the big guys, because we have to come to terms with the fact that there are some serious contenders. I mean, you two have been telling me about one-page rules nonstop, and I don't like the system, having looked into it, but you two are loving it, and that's fine. That's great. But that just confirms the fact that, there are other companies out there bringing things up. And of course, there is the great evil, the great hidden evil in the depths of the dark that is getting to emerge one day. Games Workshop is getting ready to bring back the old world.
It is.
And
it is.
Even if it's a shit product, when that hits, you're going to see the tables as your local flagship stores flooded for at least a year, is my prediction, of people trying to figure out how to play the new game. So if Mantic doesn't, figure out how to make something that doesn't upset the universe and is more smooth and works better, they're going to have some serious competition, because it's okay to make money as a company, but no one makes money like GW because they spend all their money on being recognized. They have recognition everywhere. You show that double-headed eagle and everyone knows that's a Games Workshop thing. And you show a Mantic whatever their symbol is, which I have no idea what their official symbol is.
It's like the helmet, right?
A little paint drop thing. It's the
oh yeah, the stupid little helmet. Yeah, yeah.
It's the conical helmet, right? Like
the stupid little bounty hunter helmet.
It's like a Grecian helmet, something like that.
It looks like a Mandalorian helmet. Yeah. See, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, that's Star Wars, right? Yeah, it's Star Wars. Yeah, yeah." See, that's the problem.
We bring up, and me and Sam are going to be very candid and be very open. We not only are we like Kings of OPR, but they support us, right? OPR basically has gotten into this, have promoted our videos, promoted our products, effectively gave us revenue streams, potentially. So we're not going to deny that we're certainly
just to cut in for a quick second.
We have an interest in OPR, but at the same time, OPR is coming after Kings of War. They've created a Night Stalker-ish faction called Shadow Stalkers. They've created Kingdoms of... They've basically taken every army that Kings of War plays can be played in OPR, and the armies that are more specialized, like Night Stalkers, yeah. And I'll tell you what, when Twilight can come out, they're going to grab any specialty models, and they're going to create them for their Dark Elves. And I'm just saying this because they are creating a regiments version of the game now, and it's in its infancy, but I will tell you it's rough. Me and Sam played, but it's got potential. And I'm
Mhm.
I'm only saying this because they are coming after Kings of War. There's no doubt about that.
Well,
And
there's no doubt about the Games Workshop's also coming after
that's
Kings of
right.
War. I mean, you
Mhm.
look at the spoilers they've talked about, well, kind of spoilers for the old world, and they're very clearly taking some of Kings of War's ideas and saying let's implement that. Like they're and we all know that Mantic was founded by people who split off from GW, and that they took a lot of the old when Warhammer Fantasy fell apart, Mantic took those players in, right?
But that vacuum is gone now. Like,
Yeah.
I think that some of the people in Mantic think that, hey, guess what? Age of Sigmar. I was at our local game shop. They had an Age of Sigmar tournament, 15, 16 people. Age of Sigmar is not this crappy thing that it was. It's an established game. It's an established war with astounding models. I'm just saying that, like, Age of Sigmar is now here. Warhammer Armies Project, that and the Ninth Age did not go away. It's still there. And in fact, in some ways, it's just as strong, more in Europe. But I'm saying that's still there. Like,
Mhm.
it's not. And so more than ever, we have, and by the way, Ninth Age, it's caught up. It's much more refined in its rules. So Mantic, I hope, and we're saying this because we love the game, it's a different world than it was in 2015, right? It's just that, and they have to get caught up. So yeah. Okay.
And I just wanted to say earlier, I know you guys know this, and I know only because I've interacted with you guys all the time. For anyone listening, OPR means one-page rules.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you guys get really excited, so I just want to toss that out there as a last second thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well,
people.
we
I think
love
most
Kings
people
of
know the
War. I mean,
term.
like,
So.
yes,
Yeah.
we
love
have
Kings of
a
War.
possible conflict of interest. We support OPR, and they support. We're not going to lie; they support us. At the same time, we love Kings of War. I prefer Kings of War than any OPR game. It's my favorite game, and I want to support the community. I want to see it grow, and I want to continue to play Kings of War. So just let everyone know.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, you're right, because I mean, the number of games coming out there, I mean, Mantic was definitely, on the right track when GW killed the fantasy system back in the day. But now Mantic, I think, has either become complacent or not aware. But you're right. There are a ton of game systems out there. In fact, I just saw a Facebook video for something. I don't even remember the name to it. And they were like, we have 6 different factions and we're a war game system. It's like everyone and their uncle is trying because it costs nothing to print a book these days. Publishing books is basically dirt cheap. And now with STLs out there, you don't have to have a company making models for you. You sell an STL, somebody's got a friend who's got a friend of a friend with a 3D printer in a garage somewhere.
That's right. Met
You're
one
off to the
yesterday.
races. And
Met
considering
another
how
guy
cheap the
yesterday.
resin is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yep.
resin is told. I've been told that resin's like in pennies to the pound or some nonsense like that. And I'm just like, okay, the only thing you're paying for is the file itself, and then off you go. Make as many as you can get out of one sheet.
Yeah.
So no, you're right. I mean, Mantic needs to watch out. They have gotten to the point that GW was back when they killed the old world. Now the boots have switched feet, and if Mantic doesn't watch out,
Okay.
something smoother, something more popular is going to come out.
Well, we will post this podcast and give each one of us time to go to the FBI and to the production department. So no, I'm just like,
Change
hey,
addresses.
thank you
I hear
so much.
Canada's nice.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. We
Not a
want
problem.
you on again, and I want to end with this, that, and I'll speak for Chris in saying this, that Chris can be harsh, he can be candid, but it is, to me, and I think Chris can be said, it's coming from a place of love. There is no person to me in Austin who's invested more into Kings of War and the community than Chris. And so I hope that people would see that it's coming from a person who truly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, truly does want this game to succeed, right?
I want to see the community succeed. My personal goal has always been I want us to get back to where we were back during the high point of Warhammer Fantasy. I want to see 16, 30 player, weekend local tournaments. I want to see, 10 to 12 local pickup games. I know these are very hard to hit goals, but that's been my dream all along, is to recreate the brilliance that once was. Can it be done? I don't know, but that's what I always work for. That's why I'm always out there trying to push and help and prod. I mean, it doesn't always work. I don't always use the softest of touches, but I mean, just that's where I want us to be at again.
Fair enough. Chris, thank you so much. This has been
Thank you,
Daniel.
guys.
Yeah. And Sam.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Not a problem, guys.
Any war game, anytime.